All the way from across the pond, this is once again Jay's Traveling Glass. And we're lucky enough to have with us Anna Montefiore, who has been drinking, writing about, selling wines for the last 25 years when he made Aliyah from no less than UK. So Adam's not only a good friend, but also a great wine guy. And here he is to tell you about Carmel and Yatir is Anna Montefiore in his own words. Thanks. See you later.
My name's Adam Montefiore. I'm the wine development director of Carmel Winery and of Yatir Winery. So Carmel Winery is the historic winery of Israel, founded in 1882 by Baron Edmond de Rothschild, owner of Chateau Lafite, one of the most famous wineries in the world in Bordeaux. For over 120 years, Carmel has carried the Israeli wine industry on its back. And in terms of the recent wine revolution that's happened in Israel, Carmel is also in the center of that. People say when they visit Israel that Carmel is the historic company of Israel. 3 prime ministers of Israel worked at Carmel. Carmel was Israel's first exporter. The first electricity and the first telephone ever in Israel was at Carmel. So it really is a company that represents the history of Israel and the Israeli people. The history of Carmel and the history of Israel is the same history. Also, anyone talking about the history of wine in Israel will talk about Carmel, because for over 100 years, Carmel was the Israeli wine industry. And the fact that we had an Israeli wine industry when the wine revolution started after years of wars, suicide bombings, all sorts of world wars, Gulf wars, was the fact that Carmel continued to make wine through the time of the Ottoman Empire, the State of Israel, and of course during the British Mandate. So Carmel is part of the fabric of the story of Israeli wine. And Carmel is also an example of the recent revolution in Israeli wine. Anyone visiting the Carmel Winery at Zichron Yaakov today will see the underground cellars built by Rothschilds over 120 years ago. But they'll also see a state-of-the-art boutique winery producing single vineyard wines in tiny amounts from premium vineyards in the Upper Galilee, producing wines like the Kayumi single vineyard wines in amounts which would be normally consistent with a small boutique winery. So Carmel Winery today, it remains Israel's largest winery. Our wine is marketed in the mass market in Israel, but also in the quality market, which is really the fine wine shops and restaurants market. We have 5 series. Our premium shop flagship wines are the Carmel Limited Edition, which is a Bordeaux blend, the Carmel Mediterranean, which is a Mediterranean variety blend. The first main label is the single vineyard label, the Carmel single vineyard label, which includes the famous Kayumi Vineyard Shiraz single vineyard wine, which won the Decanter Wine Award International Trophy, the first Israeli award ever to win such a big prize in international wine competition, and other single vineyard wines. Our second label is the appellation wines, which are wines produced from sub-regions in Israel, each wine representing a different region. These are recognized by the cartoon animals on the label. Our third label, which is really the premium label for the mass market, is the private collection label. And the main entry-level wine in Israel is the selected range, which is the largest brand in Israel. In Carmel, we produce 15 million bottles a year. We have vineyards all over the country, from the northern tip of the Upper Galilee, bordering on Lebanon, to the deepest Negev desert. And it means that we can cherry-pick vineyards from different terroirs, different climates, to produce our blends. However, the biggest change in quality in Carmel has occurred with the planting of our Upper Galilee vineyards, which have been planted in the last 10 years only. These vineyards are all owned directly and managed by the winery in partnership with the growers. And many of our top wines come from the Upper Galilee appellation. And we are the leading winery in the Upper Galilee. We have our own winery there called Kayumi Winery, which is a boutique winery designed to receive the grapes from different plots in single vineyards. And a lot of our premium wines come from the Upper Galilee vineyards. I'm also here to represent Yatir Winery. Yatir Winery is a small boutique winery producing 150,000 bottles. It's situated in Tel Arad, which is in the northeast Negev desert. The vineyards come from 10 minutes away, up in Yatir Forest, which is Israel's largest planted forest. The winemaker is Eran Goldwasser, who trained in Australia. And the winery was built in the year 2000. The wines were first launched in 2004. And since then, they have had a stream of successes. The highest scoring wine in a Robert Parker tasting, the highest scoring wine in a Wine Spectator tasting, regarded as Israel's finest wine by Tom Stevenson in the Wine Report, the author of the Sotheby's Wine Encyclopedia. And 5 years in a row, the Yatir wines have received 90 points plus from Robert Parker's Wine Advocate, which is the most consistent record of any Israeli winery. Yatir Forest represents a new terroir, a new growing area for Israel. It shows that grapes can be grown elsewhere other than in the north. And the wines have great depth, great color, and show a hint of Mediterranean herbs in the backdrop, which provides the slightly exotic flavor of the Eastern Mediterranean, which is where we exist.